Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. I'm excited today to be here with Erin Keating. She is the co founder of Broad Collective, and I'll let her tell you what that is about. But before we get started, I want to ask you all this question: how much time do you think you have left? And take a minute or a few seconds and really think to yourself. I have this idea of when I think I'm going to leave this plane of existence, and that may or may not be the truth. So, how important is it that you're living the life that is right for you instead of living that life that you are always told you should live? So, we're going to dive into Erin's story. And before we do that, Erin, do you want to give us just the really short version of what Broad Collective is all about?
Yeah, for sure. It's my favorite thing to talk about. Broad Collective is a membership network for professional women who are now building their own businesses in midlife. It is an online community space. We offer support, strategy, tools, and techniques, especially for women who are bundling their expertise and need to make content. It's really a deep focus on content marketing and figuring out how to put your expertise out into this new DIY media ecosystem where there's so many possible things you can be doing. But most people don't have a strategy for how to grow their audience and revenue online. And so that's what our focus is.
Awesome. One of the things that I love that you focus on is women in midlife. And I think it's a little different for men and women, but I feel like across the board, because I work with both, there's this sense of I have sacrificed everything I am for my family, for my job, for everything and everybody else but myself. And men and women typically do it in different ways. So, but having that collective of women who are looking to step into something that's more for them and meaningful for them, and having it be a women's collective so that, like I said, women and men both do this, but the way we do it is different. So being able to understand what being in a collective of people that understand and get it, because we mostly have done it in a similar way, I think is incredibly powerful. And it totally aligns with the whole Be the Wolf message, which is about bringing back all of you to wholeness. And when we have sacrificed our dreams, our wants, our desires for the sake of other things and other people, we've been operating as a half self, not a whole self.
I feel like that's right. I feel like coming back to yourself is a really familiar theme to a lot of women in midlife,
Yeah.
where they go, where have I been the last 20 years? I kind of got lost in all the shoulds and expectations and responsibilities that come with sort of conventional capital A adult life, and especially capital C career and motherhood, like all of the things that a lot of us learned were part of having it all when we were growing up and our mothers were telling us we could do anything. And it actually meant you should do everything.
Funny, I was just thinking about how one of the unique challenges of women is that historically we took care of the home, we took care of the family, we took care of the kids, and then we didn't want to be trapped without our own financial resources. We didn't want to have to be beholden to whatever man could be terrible, because we could not make our own money. And so then we had to figure out how to do the make the money thing too. And then it became this all these things that we should do as a woman and all these things that we should do as a man. And so, but none of it is really about how to live the life that is authentically true for you. It's just a bunch of piles of should. So now we have to do the things that the men should do and the things that the women should do. But what about what we need to do for our true self?
I think it's so easy for that piece to get lost or buried or neglected under the sort of mountain of having it all, the kind of life I used to live, where I was trying to keep up with the Joneses, to use an old fashioned expression, where I really thought this is what it is to be a successful adult woman. You have a big career and you have kids at home and you have a marriage and everything looks a certain way. And I don't know how I became that person because I didn't start out as that person, but I think the ladder of success in a conventional career, even though mine was in entertainment, like it was still a pretty conventional climb. And I think what got lost was like, what do I really want? And I found joy inside of each of those quarters of my life. But the place that got lost was the sort of deep sense of my own self-determination, my own I just felt like I was putting other people's needs and this big shiny picture of what life was supposed to look like
Yeah.
ahead of like the messy, authentic, real feelings I was having that I was just continuing to shove down
Yeah.
in the name of quote unquote success, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about for you, what did that successful adult woman life look like? What was it for you?
Yeah. So I had started out as an artist. I'd started out as a writer performer with a theater degree. I did one person shows and sketch comedy and all this stuff in downtown New York. And I was producing a lot of stuff I was involved in. And then I realized that producer was a job we could get paid for. And I learned that in television, there's this thing called a development executive, which is a person who sits at the network with great taste and a bucket of money and an understanding of the brand and says, oh, you actor over here. Oh, you writer over here. Oh, you producer. Come pitch me. Let me hear your ideas and let's make a show. When I learned that was an actual job you could get paid for, I was like, sign me up. And that was the path that resonated for me because I think ultimately I was not confident enough to continue to chase being a performer or being an artist. So I thought the next best thing and the stable thing, because I knew I wanted kids
Right.
more than marriage, I wanted kids. I knew I needed to make money. Knew I needed to, and I didn't want to work crazy production hours. So that was the path that made the most sense to me and was creatively fulfilling for over 20 years. It was an extraordinary journey across cable television in New York to production companies in LA. And then I landed at Snapchat for the last 6 years, where I ran scripted original programming. Who knew that they had that? They did. And that was an outrageous ride through tech, through the convergence of all media into mobile, to this very heady thing that I went there to do, which was invent filmmaking for your phone. In 2017, now people talk vertical dramas and all of this stuff. Yes, it's been going on for a long time.
You,
So
you
yeah,
said something a little ways back where you felt like maybe you lacked the confidence and you wanted to step into something stable. Tell me a
yes.
little bit about that transition point for you, because I think this is where most people I found decide to start sacrificing their needs and their wants and their desires of what they want to create and build. It's that I need to make money because I need to have a family and people are going to depend on me versus I just am going to depend on myself or only have to be concerned with myself. But as soon as there's this, maybe other people are going to be involved, then I feel like there's a commonality to slip into that. I have to do this stable thing. For you, what was that transition point like? What
Yeah,
did
I think it was less other people are going to depend on me and more like if I want to have kids, I have to step into convention.
Mm,
I have to step into a more conventional idea of life. In my 20s, I did whatever I wanted. I lived all over the place. I traveled to be in shows. I made work. I made money doing freelance stuff, but I never took a job. I lived a more kind of bohemian life that was all around the work of creative work that I was making. But I could not see how that translated into being able to afford living in New York City, having kids. And also, I am ambitious, and I couldn't see how the things I was doing creatively was going to cumulatively become the career that I saw modeled very infrequently for me. At this time, we're talking the year 2000, late 90s. You didn't know that being a comedian or being a writer, performer, director, whatever hybrid thing I was, that was a path. And also, I was always heavy, struggled with body image issues, really was concerned that I was not good enough,
Yeah.
not intellectually, but the whole package.
Yeah.
Where I knew I had it creatively, I knew I had it intellectually, but I could not walk into an audition and say, fuck it. Which is what you have to be able to do. You have to be able to show up, give it your all, and not care what happens. It's like, and I cared so much what you thought of me. I wanted everyone to be pleased with me and everyone liked me. And I was just a very good girl with a rebellious streak, but a very good girl fundamentally.
Yeah.
So I did not have the fuck it. And I really did not have the fuck it until my 50s.
Yeah.
It took me 20 solid years to find it.
And you're not alone in that. And that's such a big piece to, I think, really be able to make what your heart wants happen. You have to have the fuck it.
Yeah.
And it's ironic because to make the life that your soul wants, you have to be not attached to the outcome at all. And
no, I mean,
at
it's
it.
so hard, right? I get it more now. I'm more integrated now. I'm more healed now. I'm more confident. I have a track record of winning. I went on that ladder and very organically found my way from one thing to the next, really staying true to my creative heart, but had a lot of success. And turns out that was a pretty stable career until it wasn't. But yeah, I always admired people who could not care what people thought of them because they were so determined to fulfill whatever vision they had for themselves. I had that vision, but I did not have the confidence.
Yeah. And like I said, you're not alone in that. But something shifted for you during a time when I think things shifted for a lot of people. And I think it's an important time to talk about it because I think a lot of us learned this lesson and started taking these big leaps and started having that fuck it attitude. But I'm finding now that people, as we've gotten out of this time period, people are rolling back into that. I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to do the stable thing. I'm going to be really concerned about the outcome and worried about what I'm going to lose. And it's shifting for people. So, can you talk to me about what your big turning point was?
It was COVID, right? It was a confluence of events that happened when COVID hit. I was living in an 1,100 square foot house and working from home. And so was my husband. And my twins were 8. So they were at home. We were all at
And
home.
your rational mind is just coming online around 7, 8. So that puts a whole nother thing in the mix.
Insane. And my response to that was workaholism. My response to that was lock myself in the bedroom from 8 in the morning to 7 at night and say, I'm working, don't bother me. I really I don't know. I found a way to hide from everything in work. And I was working at a place where that was the way we did it. We were all overachieving good girls on my team, working to please the corporate bosses. And we were rewarded really well financially for it. And we all sacrificed our lives for this place. I happened to have a marriage that wasn't doing well. So this kind of pressure cooker of everybody at home, it was really bad for us. But I was doing so well at work. I was justifiably hiding. And we bought a house. We moved to the valley. We got more room. It was all during COVID. Then we started to come out of COVID. We got vaccinated. The kids found their way to a remote school that we would drop them off at every day. Things started to feel more somewhat back to normal. And then I got COVID. And I was like, I'll just work through it. Like, I'm at home. We're still working from home. I'll just mute myself when I'm coughing. And it's insane when I think about it now. But I let myself get sicker and sicker. I went to the hospital to say, hey, I know I have COVID. I'm looking at my blood oxygen. It's not looking good. And they're like, yeah, I went to a bad hospital. And they were like, we could give you antibiotics. I'm like, it's a virus? Very confusing. So I went back to working and hacking my lungs up all night long. And finally, I was like, I think this is going the wrong direction. And can you take me to UCLA? And I got to UCLA and they were like, come right this way. They checked me in. I had COVID pneumonia. I was there for only 3 days, but hooked up to every IV. I was on they used to give this thing called Remdesivir. They were like, what are you doing here? You're in your late 40s. You're pretty healthy. And I'm like, I don't know. And yeah, my room filled up with flowers. The biggest bouquet of flowers was from my job. If you want a metaphor, there it is.
Yeah.
That was my love affair. And it was quiet. No one could ask me for anything.
Wow.
People were coming and checking on me. I was being cared for. And
what was that like for you? That aspect of it.
So weird.
Was it comfortable? Was it uncomfortable?
It was like I was at Canyon Ranch. It was like I had gone on a retreat. I remember thinking, there's this crappy little TV and I can watch whatever I want. I had my iPhone, I had my podcasts. I was just happy as a clam.
Wow.
And it was quiet. And when you have kids and working in a tiny house, and it was just, nothing was ever quiet. Nothing was ever slow. Nothing was ever unscheduled in my life. There was never a time when people weren't constantly asking for something from me.
Yeah.
And that I was striving to give.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to be all the things that I had signed up to be. And my ex-husband was really struggling to be the only parent for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And he was angry at me for allowing myself to get this sick. And he picked a fight with me as he was coming to pick me up from the hospital over text. And I thought, I don't like that. Actually, this is like the marriage vows thing. This is for in sickness and in health, and this is in sickness. And I had never been sick in any way. I had never been sick. And this, I could have died.
Yeah.
I could have died. And I was like, if I could have died, and this is how the marriage is going, I don't think so. It was as light as that. It was like, no.
What I find so interesting about that, of course you were sick, but I'm curious if it was more the space and the quiet over being sick that allowed you to actually see more of what was true and right for you.
100%. I would not have gotten to the quiet without getting sick.
Yeah.
And that is something that I know is true for so many women.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I would go to work with fevers all the time. And the first time I got COVID, I was a bartender at the time. I was the super spreader because it was before we actually knew how bad it was. But you just go to work when you're sick because you don't get time off and you don't get paid for your time off. And so I was so pissed that it lasted. Normally, if I get sick, it's a day and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
But I was like, why am I fucking sick for 3 weeks? What the hell is going on? And actually, I think it was my coworker was sick for 3 weeks. I was sick for 6 days. But for me and my immune system, that was insane. Yeah. And it wasn't until I got COVID the second time on an airplane that it really knocked me out and I couldn't do anything. But yeah, I always worked through it, always showed up no
Great
matter
way
what.
we did it. It was the way we did it. We did
Yeah,
not take time off.
100%.
That sort of unlimited vacation days, yeah, sure. We all know that's a trap. So, yeah, the culture wins out in every workplace, right? So, yeah, it was like, uh, it was the beginning of the end of the marriage. And 2 weeks later, I turned 50. And
Mm,
so it was like, boom, right? All of these things all at once. It was like the universe saying to me, hello,
yeah,
hello, remember you? Remember who you were and who you want to be, and that you're actually allowed to. I had stopped doing every self care thing. I had some good habits for a long time, and I lost all of them. I sacrificed all of them for the job.
for
I
the job.
couldn't, yeah, I couldn't leave to go to therapy. I couldn't justify being out of the house any more than I already was for work. I didn't have an exercise practice that I could hold on to. I had been doing 12-step stuff for my relationship with food for a long time. I stopped doing that. So it was just like everything was out the window except for this massively demanding thing that was giving me so much because the rest of my life was so anemic. Other than it was like work and spend time with the kids. That was all I could really do. My friendships, my marriage, like all of it, not good.
Well,
And yeah, so we went to couples counseling, which we acknowledged would be the last time we would do that. We'd done it a lot. And 6 months later, he moved out. And 6 months after that, I got laid off.
oh, wow. It's interesting because the universe will, if we don't do it ourselves, and this is, I think, a big difference between being an entrepreneur and being somebody who's a worker. If you don't do it yourself, you're going to end up in that position. But when you're an entrepreneur, the stress is 10 times what it is. And the ability to lose yourself is 10 times what it is when you're working for somebody else. And what have noticed with my clients and myself is that if I'm not doing the things that take care of myself, I can't carry the creative vision. I can't actually show up and be who I need to be. And my job is literally to be the living example of my work. So but one of the things that, like, as the universe is shaking everything up, that space. I'm curious because you had these couple of days of space. Are you still creating space in your life now
Oh,
to be able to stay on track?
yeah. Yeah. I blew everything. Everything is so different today than it was
Tell me.
in that moment. My ex-husband moved out. I got laid off from the job. I took a couple of months I went on a retreat in Italy. I did a bunch of the things that I had really been wanting to do. That is where that question, how much time do you think you have left, comes from. It comes from Sherry Salata, who led that retreat. She's amazing. She comes out of the Oprah universe. And so she said to me, and I swear to God, I felt like she said it every day when I was with her. She said it to me once, and it stuck in my head.
You're like spinning it in your head over and over again. How much time do you think you have left?
Because I had never had that thought before.
Wow.
Until I got COVID, I had never thought about my mortality. I had never thought about, oh, I'm going to be 50 and this is the second half of my life. And what do I want that to look like? I was literally just the duck smooth sailing above and the feet just paddling like a maniac.
Yeah, and the life you were living, it's oh, the marriage isn't going great. So the work thing, it's for me when I started working, I started working pretty young at 15 and I wasn't getting my needs met emotionally or any which way really at home. So when I started working, I was like, this is going to be the thing. It's the rules are so easy. All I have to do is what I'm told. The rules don't change every other minute like they do at home. This is great. And they give me money. Wow. So I totally became the workaholic as well. But what I didn't realize it sounds like you may have had a similar experience, is especially when everything else is so anemic, as you said, that you're holding on for dear life, because if you lose this, it feels like everything will crumble.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you're literally living in survival mode. So little by little, when you're in survival mode, you just start disappearing like parts of yourself and your needs and your wants, and everything is about like making sure this thing doesn't leave or I don't lose this thing, because if I do, like everything's gonna crumble.
And and I was suffering and I couldn't see it. And my ex-husband used to be angry at me how much I was working instead of compassionate with me over how much I was suffering that he could see. But I couldn't see it. And I don't blame him for trying to wake me up from that. But
Yeah.
there's lots of factors. In the time after I got laid off, what I really wanted back in my life were two things.
That's how.
I knew I could work. I knew I could make shows. I knew I could, I had a lot of success. So I was very confident finally. I did not have that when I was young, finally had it. Maybe there's three things. So one thing was I had lost my voice. I was a really incredible evangelist for the brands that I worked for. So I was really good at going out into the world and into the marketplace and saying, this is why you should come do business with us. This is our I was an actor. I had been an actor. This is our messaging. This is our position. I was very convincing and I could speak the talk, right? I could talk the talk and I could seduce people into coming and doing business with us. Any job has its own kind of seduction if it's
Yeah, totally.
external facing, right? I didn't think of it that way then, but I certainly think of it that way now. But I realized that I was towing the party line. I was saying what I was supposed to say. I was just being a good girl writ large. I loved the team and I loved the work we were doing. There were lots of things I didn't love about the company or the culture of tech or the value system the world was seeming to embrace so wholeheartedly. I was not aligned with a lot of things that I was just going, let me focus on my lane. And I was obsessed with podcasts. So I started a podcast and it was called Hotter Than Ever. And it was about figuring out the best ways to live your life in the second half. I wanted to talk about all the things that I had been neglecting, right? Love, sex, how to do relationships, how to deal with the narcissist in your life, how to reinvent your career, how to deal with trauma, how like all of the internal, personal, juicy, messy stuff that I had pushed aside in favor of this big career, including my own relationship with my body, my relationship with my sexuality, pleasure of any kind. I became a zealot for all of this juicy life stuff and was determined to live into the title of the podcast. Yeah, just determined to be hotter than ever and to find my own way of communicating in my own voice in this new medium. And I have to say, it is the best thing I ever did for myself. I thought it was a business. I thought it was going to lead to having a production company and doing all these things. But while I was making 135 episodes of this show over 3 years and experimenting and trying all these different things, the media industry collapsed.
Yeah.
And so I was like those cartoon characters who are like running and the sidewalk is falling out behind them. Like there is no road to go back to. There is no career to return to. There is nothing there. It felt to me very clear that the idea for the business of Hotter Than Ever as a media company that focused on storytelling for women in midlife, empowerment, all of this stuff, that was going to be fighting for crumbs off a table that was contracting and shrinking in the age of streaming, in the age of fragmented attention, all of this stuff. And the podcast was leading me to this world of coaching, but I'm not a coach. I'm a maker. I know how to make a product. I know how to tell a story. I know how to build a business. I know how to put teams together. I am not a one-on-one, I'm more of a one-to-many kind of girl. And so that was like, that's not the business. What's the business? And I had a dark night of the soul.
Tell me about the dark night of the soul, because I
Girl,
totally relate.
that's your bread and butter, is the dark night of the soul.
It's that piece where, because so many people, when they're in it, they don't see a way out.
Yeah.
So it's so important that people know that you can be in here. And that idea, it was so visceral, it was so beautiful. Like you're running and the sidewalk is falling out from underneath you. Because really, for most people to actually make a change, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
It takes the sidewalk falling out from under you and no way to go back, because
Yes.
at that point you're forced to do it differently. And if you don't do it differently, you'll just recreate it in exactly, like, it'll have a different costume and a different set, and the career or the business will be a different name, but it will still be the same shit. And so the dark nights of the soul, when they lead to the shifts, they're really important.
Yes, 100%. Look, doing the podcast transformed me.
Yeah.
Finding my own voice transformed. Getting divorced and just deciding I could do it as a single mom transformed me. And it was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not the doing of the work, not the speaking in my own voice, but in the identity change.
Yeah.
Because I had been a person with a title and money to spend at my job. I was a known quantity. And really, if that path had remained open for me, which I got laid off, but also I closed that door. But if that path had remained open for me, where I saw myself going was chief creative officer, EVP, head of programming, like those big, giant, stressful political corporate jobs.
Yeah.
That was really the only, otherwise you stay here or go down. And I was still in a climbing mindset. I was still in a linear mindset.
Yeah.
But I made this podcast where I talked about my sex life, and I talked about real things, messy things, emotional things. And I told the whole truth, and I stopped lying to myself, and I stopped lying to everybody else. And I really have always thought of myself as a scrupulously honest person. And the only person that I have been, the person that I have been the biggest liar to has been me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started telling the truth. And in that way, I started to close the door on whatever could be possible. At least in the story I was telling myself was, if you do this work, you can't go back. There'll be too much out there that's too personal, and no one's going to want that. Now, who fucking knows, right? Maybe someone wants it, and maybe whatever. Maybe the future is not what I imagined, but it was a door that I was gradually closing so that I wouldn't go back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we subconsciously do that when the soul is so hungry for what's true and what's real. It will do things to make it so you can't go back to the old way. And you can't unsee and as you started to reclaim your voice, and there's such power in the reclamation, doing the things that are forbidden in the old identity, in the old world, so that you can let that identity fall away. And you are absolutely right, it is totally uncomfortable and nobody wants to actually go through it. And unfortunately, most people wait until there's crisis before they actually go through it. And it's still not comfortable, but it's a hell of a lot more comfortable if you're pushing your edges in a way that you can step more and more into who you actually are. And again, it can be super messy, but things start to open up for you. Did that happen for you as you closed the door on the old identity, started more confidently stepping into the new you, or the more of the real you, the wolf you?
Yeah.
What began to transpire? What did you begin to accept? I know you talked about accepting more about your body, accepting more about who you were. What are the aspects of you that you really reclaimed that helped lead you into the next thing?
Yeah. I think I started to lead my life from a what's going to make me happy perspective.
Yes.
And I would get babysitters and go out on dates and I would go on trips and I would do all these things that I never allowed myself to do when I was married, when I was putting work and marriage ahead of everything. Uh, I really just started to see myself again and go, okay, all right, here are the good things and here are the things that have been starved. And how do I nourish myself? And how do I start to feel good? And one of those things was I've been like a lot of women on a body self-love, self-loathing journey around body and identity around my physical self. And a couple of years ago, in the midst of this podcast experience, I started taking GLP-1s. I started to gradually lose weight. I found Pilates and the claiming my body in a new way through intimacy with myself and
Mm.
others, and then also through taking care of myself and solving the medical problem of my broken relationship to food and appetite. The food noise quieted, the self-hate quieted, the judgment quieted, and then I could start to do things that I would never think of to do in my other life, which is like deal with my gut health, take creatine and collagen, get all my blood work done, and handle like the weird calcium spikes I was having. And turns out I needed parathyroid surgery. I started to attend to everything on the list that I had neglected. And now I am like fitter and stronger and more. I don't approach working out from a place of discipline. Which is always a losing battle
Yeah,
for me
totally.
because I don't relate to that word at all. I make decisions based on is it going to make me feel good,
Yeah.
and I have become a complete Pilates junkie and go almost every day and am strong as shit and
Yeah.
physically transformed.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the before and after pictures on Instagram. It is about this change in me is a physical manifestation of the change that started inside of me.
Said it when the self-hate quieted, the noise in your head, like all of those things. And people don't understand when you've got all that internal stuff going on, all you're doing subconsciously is trying to get out of pain. So,
Totally.
of course, you're not going to take care of the body. Of course, you're not going to work out because that requires effort. It requires pain. You just want to stop. When you start to reclaim who you are, reclaim your voice, allow yourself to get messy, allow yourself to be all of the things there, and you begin to accept those aspects of yourself, then noise quiets. And then you're exactly right. The health habits become a want to.
Yes, they have become a want to.
It's so wild. I know for me, it was the same. And it's just the more we are trying to do what we're supposed to do and be the good girl, or maybe be the tough or whatever it is we think we're supposed to be, the more we end up like just dismantling the ecosystem of our bodies, our mind, and our spirit.
Yeah.
And our business ultimately, because when you're doing that, you can create, make a lot of money and have a quote successful business, but you cannot create a successful monetary business with a successful, this feels great business. It
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Back to the dark night of the soul piece. So I've been doing the podcast for a couple of years and it wasn't growing the way I wanted it to grow. And I wasn't willing to do all the things on social media that you're supposed to do. I was not. I'd start a Substack. I didn't do it. I really loved making the podcast. I wanted that to be the job. So whenever anybody said email marketing or sales funnel or lead magnet or CRM or any of these things that are now the bread and butter of my everyday life, whenever anybody used to say that stuff to me, I'd be like, I really wanted to just be the artist, just be the creative. And I paid people to do a lot of stuff around me so that I could live in that zone that only I can live in. But I was really frustrated. And I realized that I had been interviewing extraordinary women on this podcast, experts in their fields, who were building personal brands, who were making a living off of their expertise, who were out there in the world sharing their wisdom. These were the women that had become my friends. I had up-leveled my social groups. I had made new, very close friends in my life through the pursuit of the podcast. And that has been an unexpected gift and so wonderful. I have always been a girl's girl. I have always loved supporting other women. And I used to run a networking group in New York in my late 20s, early 30s, where we were for women artist entrepreneurs. That's what we called ourselves. Everyone I knew was like an actor trying to get a movie produced so she could star in it, or someone writing a show, or someone pitching television shows, we were all hungry and starting out, and we were creatives and we were multifaceted. And we called the group Broad Collective. And I had kept the domain name for 20 years. I kept renewing it. I didn't know why. I didn't want the name to go away. I liked the name, and it represented something to me.
Yeah.
I'm a good titler. I'm really good at names. And in this dark night of the soul, I realized every one of the women that I was interviewing on the podcast was building a business through their content. And what I am great at is making great content and telling stories and cultivating an artist's voice. But a brand's voice is not that different. And a personal brand's voice is not that different than an artist's voice. And I had been doing a call once a month with a former colleague from Snapchat because she was building a business where she was educating parents on how to handle technology for their kids. And we were wildly successful media executives who were struggling with the same problems. How do we grow? How do we monetize? How do we grow? How do we monetize? Why do we have to make all this content? Why do I have to go on camera? Why, as a 50-year-old, do I have to go on? God damn it. So fucking unfair. Like, why do I have to show my face? Internalized shame, all of the cultural messages and socialization that we all have. And I realized that what I needed and what she and I needed were each other. We needed the wisdom of other women who were walking this path, who were really successful in their professional lives, who, for whatever reason, whether they got laid off, whether they got burnt out, whether they had caregiving responsibilities that couldn't square with a corporate life and those expectations, whether they were tired of being hired by and managed by 35-year-olds. At a certain point, and then your estrogen drops, and your desire to accommodate other people drops with it. And that's how you get this no fucks left to give era. I disagree with that completely. I think what we want in this phase of our lives is agency and meaning.
Yeah.
We're not out here trying to grind and crush it and build your empire and all this stuff. It's no, can I just make a nice life for myself where I'm in charge, where I can benefit from my expertise and so do other people, and I don't have to deal with all of this noise?
Yeah. It's really about, I think for a lot of women in this phase, it's that place where I have struggled to survive for so long. And like that point where you finally realize there's nothing I can do to make everybody like me and everybody want to take care of me. And it's just not possible. So fuck it. I'm going to just take care of myself and do what's right for me and step in. And a big piece of that to live above this point, I call the alchemy point, where it's like you're in this place of peace, love, joy, and freedom. Where is that sovereignty? Meaning is a big part of it, but you cannot get there until you are reach that point of like safety and that no fucks, because otherwise you're still going to be scrambling to prove that you're enough, prove that you're worthy, prove that you're capable. And thinking at a subconscious level that will make you safe. But the only damn fucking thing that will ever truly make you safe is stepping into who you are and doing what is best and right for you.
Totally. Totally. So
How do
I 10 o'clock at night, I'm out on my deck. I'm sad. I'm looking at the moon. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And why am I I think the podcast is expiring in its utility for me. I think the growth I needed in this chapter has happened. And actually, I think the business is, let's all get together and share the wisdom and share the tools and share the strategies and coach each other. And through all of this new chapter of business building where we're in charge, where we get to say where we get to put our expertise into action. And we have to go through this identity shift together. And we have to go through this learning curve together of all these new tools and all these new strategies and all these uncomfortable milestones of what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? How uncomfortable are you willing to be?
Yeah.
Find the wedge, find the tiny place where you feel joy making content. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Start
100%.
there. Right? And then then we'll deal with all the shit you don't want to talk about, all of the conversion rates and all of this stuff. Okay, we're going to all do that together, even though we never had to do that before. And we don't like it and all of that. And we're used to direct deposit paychecks and stuff like that. But what is the choice? There is so much contraction going on in so many businesses.
Yeah.
There's so much change going on inside of us. There's so much less willingness to suffer for jobs.
And yeah, there are things that need to be done in a business, but how can you do it in a way where you're operating from a high frequency and being in community and collectiveness is something that's like, oh, I don't love doing this, but I really enjoy it when I'm doing it with people that I really love and care about and who have my back. And so therefore you actually can see things that you can't see when you're at a frequency like, I hate this. So
alone. That's the thing. This solopreneurship and small business journey is very, no matter what it builds into, it is lonely.
yeah.
And it is you just saying to yourself, yeah, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this. I have this conviction. I believe in this. I have a vision, I have passion, and I'm going to hold on to that for all it's worth. And it's actually, there's a lot of other women who feel that way. And they're doing the same thing. Let's do it together. It'll be more fun.
100%. How do people join in with the Broad Collective?
Yeah. Go to the website, broadcollective.com. Follow me on Instagram, broad_collective on Instagram. Read our Substack. Start at the website. And we have new cohorts launching all the time. And we bring in experts. We really I'm doing a show it while you grow it approach to this business. I am on the journey that all of my members are on. And so I aspire to be as transparent and authentic as I can in this process as we all grow and scale and build together for the lives we want to live.
Good. And my last question, what does be the wolf mean to you?
You know, a wolf could look pretty savage from the outside. And I think that's what we all fear, is our internal self is feral. So we clean it up and we neaten it up and we make it all nice and acceptable and palatable for other people. But by doing that, we domesticate ourselves.
Yeah.
I have a very domesticated dog. And whenever I see his natural instincts kick in, I go, oh, there's something inside of you that we've rounded the edges off through breeding. That's how I feel about women in midlife. It's we have been socialized into acceptability. And the women I admire the most in the world are slightly feral.
Yeah.
The people I admire the most in the world have some sort of rabid self-determination. And I'm going to do this regardless of what the world thinks, what my parents think. Oh my God. What my former colleagues think. I'm going to actually show up real on LinkedIn
Yeah.
A big risk for me. I was like, guess what? I'm just going to show up real here. It took me years to get to that place.
Yeah.
But I think it's about showing up real. I think it's about letting yourself be a little bit feral and letting that guide you and drive you. That's your instinct.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with not only my guests, but with the collective of women that you are working with in Broad Collective. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so happy we crossed paths. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And remember, everybody, when you operate from the truth, the essence, and all of who you truly are, when you fucking be the wolf, humanity evolves. We'll see you all later. Bye, everyone.